Hey, Ben. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's going pretty well. So let's talk about the new book. Obviously, one of the things that we are watching in the United States is a radical rise in the number of people who have declared themselves non-believing.
Frankly, I'm shocked it took this long to finally start ending humanity's longest game of make-believe. Or maybe I'm not. The vast majority of Earthlings have shown themselves to be pretty stupid a lot of the time. Let's do this.
BionicDance!
Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. For those who don't know, Ben Shapiro is a chowderhead who has somehow managed to make himself famous for saying chowderheaded things. I don't get it either, but here we are.
That is the largest group of people in the Democratic Party at this point. So what exactly has happened to church in the United States? Because as church wanes, obviously secularism rises, and with it, this seeming call for more government interventionism, more liberalism. What's happened to church in the United States?
Now look at what he's done there. I mean, yes. The public perception is that the right wing is full of raging fundies browsing Walmart on a scooter with an assault rifle slung on their back. But if I used that impression as actual data, that'd be terribly sloppy of me and engaging in lazy stereotyping. That said, though, there's no way to connect secularism with big government, nor is the characterization of the left as preferring big government reasonable, because the right sure does love government intervention when it comes to war and to not taxing the rich, and trying to shove Christian prayer into schools. And don't kid yourself, of course it would be Christian prayer. If you want to engage in lazy stereotyping, Benny Boo, be careful. Your own gutters aren't exactly clean. I don't normally cover politics. Can we get back to the religion thing, please?
I think what's happening is that Christians religious people in general, I think, are sort of drifting on the tide of the culture and going wherever the culture takes them. That's the complacency I talk about in the book. I think that's the great challenge that we face as a church, is just this willingness, or an unwillingness really, to resist the tide of the culture.
And you might say the same thing of Christians when the religion really got going a couple of millennia ago. It's possible the culture shifted just a hair. But there is a very important difference here. Religions like Christianity rely heavily on indoctrination, on that substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen brand of faith. We apparently made the mistake in this country of teaching kids science and telling them to question authority. Oops. And as a result, they found religion had no real-world foundation. That's religion's weak spot. Education. If the culture is headed toward giving people access to more information, as it seems to be, good. Ignorance is hardly a virtue, and Christianity, which is explicitly built on adherence without or despite information, is obviously going to take a hit from an informed populace.
So why exactly is that happening? So that I was always informed, as a religious person myself, I was always informed that the value in religion always lay in sort of its adherence to eternal values and standing up for principles.
The thing about principles is that nobody agrees on what they are or should be. Even if we take secularism out of the equation, even if we take other religions out of the equation, take a look at how many different sects and splinter factions there are just in Christianity. And I'm willing to bet that if you actually sat two people down from even the same church and started comparing their worldviews, we'll find between them a few different interpretations, contradictions, and flat-out ignoring of various religious principles. These eternal values don't exactly seem quite so universal when you really examine it. Incidentally, I'm talking a lot about Christianity here, but my understanding is that Benjamin is Orthodox Jewish, yet he's always going on about Judeo-Christian values and speaking at Christian churches. The available information seems contradictory at best. But I'm talking about Christianity a lot for a very good reason. Though I cut that part out earlier, his guest mentions that the United States is 80% Christian, so I think it's safe for me to single out that particular breed of theism.
And yet, I agree with you. I mean, I see it in my own religious community, this attempt to sort of give away those eternal values in favor of some pizza and guitar. This belief that religion is somehow going to earn new converts and fill the pews simply by giving into the prevailing winds of social culture.
If the current culture means that your church is handing out free pizza, I think we can both call that a win.
You see this in the Democratic Party with Pete Buttigieg, who cites the Bible to support pro-abortion positions, for example. Why have so many churches acquiesced in this?
Mayor Pete just made himself irrelevant by dropping out of the presidential race last night. I have things to say about that, but as I say, I don't normally cover politics. I'll just say this as someone who was raised in Vermont. Go Bernie. But I have to say, I don't know anybody who is pro-abortion, pro-choice, pro-body autonomy, but pro-abortion? That implies that someone out there wants to end pregnancies, and a few dark depressives and probably as many crazy people aside, killing off the human race by not allowing reproduction is not really on anybody's agenda, no matter their religious beliefs or lack.
Maybe the fundamental issue is that we focus only on the here and now, and the focus has been in the church generally, has been making your life more comfortable. I mean, the most odious versions of that, of course, things like the prosperity gospel and Joel Osteen, and that's the most explicit version. But you find versions of that anywhere you go, it seems like, where it's about getting along with the culture and making friends.
Someone please explain to me the mindset that getting along and making friends is a bad thing. What am I always saying? When theists can share and play nicely with the other kids, I'll shut up. But this guy is saying that Christians should do exactly the opposite. Him and his ilk are why I'm discussing religion at all. That's the problem with the church, and in fact the corporatists in government. They got greedy and impatient and overplayed their hand, showing the populace what was behind the curtain, and at least half of us got quite angry at what we saw. If these jokers had played a longer game for a slower payoff, they might not be facing the kind of opposition about which these two are grumping. Not that I really want to give them advice, I'm just pointing out their flaws. Speaking of flaws, have you seen Matt Walsh's Twitter account? He might be joking. I hope he's joking. But he describes himself as a theocratic fascist and a tyrant, which is either really sick or a really lousy sense of humor. And far more unforgivable is the complete absence of an Oxford comma between banjo player and beekeeper. You get the torches, I'll rustle up a few pitchforks. I have some very strong feelings about Oxford commas.
Even the virtues, so-called virtues that are promoted, being welcoming, being tolerant, being accepting, which of course aren't virtues at all, but that's all about just getting along with people. And it's the focus is always, it's not about the eternal things. It's about the here and now.
Hold on a sec. Rewind. Say that again.
Even the virtues, so-called virtues that are promoted, being welcoming, being tolerant, being accepting, which of course aren't virtues at all.
Is treating someone like crap a virtue? Because it sounds like he thinks being a royal jerkwad is a virtue. And so what if it's about the here and now? He makes it sound like it's an either or, here and now versus eternal stuff. But it's not. If you believe in that religious malarkey, that's still no excuse to be a bully. Even if you think your intentions are good, there's a real chance your interference is unwelcome, and if you try to force it, you're being a douche nugget. Besides, wouldn't the here and now be important to this eternal stuff? How is being intolerant and xenophobic gonna get people saved if you think they need to be? You're basically telling them to stay out of the church this way. Your enthusiasm for zealotry will be your undoing. You are the reason people are becoming more secular. You and that attitude.
So how do we make religious people less complacent? Because it seems like the easiest way to move along in our culture, Matt, is to be complacent, is to see tolerance as the highest possible value. Whatever floats your boat seems to be the ethic of the day. And of course, here we're talking about the culture. We're not even talking about what government ought to be doing. We're talking about just what you as a person believe is sinful and not sinful. How do we fight back against that when the easiest path to being treated well in today's society is indeed to give up some of those values or to at least be quiet about those values for the sake of popularity?
How about for the sake of empathy? Imagine you're minding your own business, being religious and all, and someone from another religion starts barking at you, telling you how wrong and horrible you are, threatening you with torture in the afterlife, but still torture, and insisting that their beliefs be taught to children by the state. You gonna be happy about that? I don't think you will be. What you're seeing here is a double standard. A not unexpected double standard, but clearly a different set of rules for Benny Boo versus the rest of the world. And, oddly enough, they benefit Ben. Imagine The one thing you'll never see from people like this is them even considering the possibility of taking people fleeing their religion in droves as criticism of the religion, that there is a chance they might be wrong or that the way they deliver their message hurts them more than helps. Being nice to people kind of helps them along on the whole thinking you have a point thing. If an increasingly secular United States is looming on the horizon, what might you have done to help cause it?
I think we have to get back to, first of all, basic questions like what is our purpose? Why do we exist? What's the purpose of living? I mean, these are the questions that you're supposed to go to religion for, and religion is supposed to provide an answer for. The questions that religion used to not be afraid to answer, but recently has been.
I find that framing interesting. You're supposed to go to religion to answer life's philosophical questions. Supposed to. But says who? There's obviously a bias here. A not unexpected bias, but a bias nonetheless. Why should we go to religion for these answers when the flaws of religion can be laid bare with only the simplest unbiased and objective scrutiny? Be it factual claims which don't hold up under investigation, magic powers and miracles we don't even see in our own lives, or teaching us values we find abhorrent, to many, religion doesn't seem like the place to go for answers to life's questions. It seems like outdated Bronze Age nonsense that has long since been discarded in favor of a less draconian and obnoxious set of ideas and ideals. And you wonder why a more educated populace is rejecting it. Sounds to me like these two are engaging in a bit of willful blindness.
So there needs to be a renewed focus on that, an understanding of what our purpose is. And that's going to involve things like, I think in the church, calling congregants to sacrifice. There needs to be a moral message. We can't be afraid of the moral message. That's the interesting thing, seems to me, about guys like Bernie Sanders. Why does he resonate so much? Part of the reason is, the entitlement mentality, the stupid millennials, so on and so forth. Like that's part of it. But the other part of it is that he has a moral message. His message is all about moral outrage and all the evil things and terrible things that are happening in the culture. I disagree with his prescriptions to remedy those evils, but at least he has a moral message. Whereas I think for among conservatives and Christians, and we've become afraid of making that moral point.
The thing about a platform like Bernie's is that he leaves room for people like you to exist without interference, right up until you start trying to interfere with other people's lives. Or, to put it another way, you can say your message, you just can't enforce it on others, and they can't enforce theirs on you, as long as you can mind your own business. As I say, learn to share and play nicely with the other kids. Conservatives don't have that. Conservatives expect conformity rather than freedom and a rigid hierarchy. Don't nitpick. I'm well aware that I'm generalizing, but my description of the conservative mindset is common enough to justify the stereotype, even if it's not 100% universal. I shouldn't have to make these disclaimers, but the internet is the internet, and they should be afraid to put that message out there. I don't even want to follow dress codes, never mind your loopy, it's not okay to be different intolerance, and if you try to force it on us, be afraid, 'cause we're not gonna take it. No, we ain't gonna take it. You're gonna have to try bringing peace, because the sword doesn't scare us anymore.
So what do you think is the moral message of Christianity that needs to be heard in today's culture? Because you're talking to a lot of people who read this book are going to be people who are already committed Christians, already committed religious people. But let's say you're talking to somebody secular. Why should they become a committed religious person as opposed to simply sort of drifting along on the waves here?
I think one of the most important moral messages is about the dignity of the human person, that we are human beings, have value, that we matter, we have dignity. And you don't find that in the broader culture. What you find in the culture, that the things that are celebrated in the culture are the things that degrade the human person.
I am so glad my irony meters are turned off and in storage right now, or all of San Diego would be like a nuke was detonated right over the town. The irony of these two lieutenants of intolerance talking about human value, human dignity, nearly made my head explode, never mind an irony meter. The thing about being degraded is you have to feel degraded. Matt Walsh claims that what's celebrated in today's culture is what degrades humanity, but people don't normally celebrate what makes them feel bad. Though I was a teenager through half of the 90s, and there were a lot of people digging on personal pathos, so I guess there's exceptions. Benny is rabidly homophobic, but it's hard to look at a pride parade and think that those folks don't dig on being queer. Goodness knows that I prefer being a lesbian to the alternative. And one of the best arguments I've heard for sexual preferences not being a choice is that nobody would ever willingly choose a man. But maybe I'm a little biased on that one. Point is that, yes, much of the culture disagrees with these two boys, but the idea that we're degrading ourselves is just silly. The idea that it's not up to us is even sillier.
And nobody's really happy with that, and no one feels happy, and I think that's why there's so much depression and drug use and everything, and the suicide epidemic. All these things are wrapped up in it.
If he's trying to say that an absence of religion or religious values causes any of that, never mind whether he's right that that's how people feel, it's simply unsupported. He says it and expects us to take it for granted, which I'm not inclined to do. In other words, citation needed.
So I think that can obviously appeal to people. That's a message that can appeal to someone, even who's not religious, that you have dignity, you have value.
Not to harp on the LGBT topic, but it's called gay pride, not gay, gosh, I feel so worthless. And this applies across the board to every other issue out there that theists seem to find quite horrid. Tolerance and acceptance are about exactly that, showing people they have value. No God required. The idea that these movements degrade people, the fact that Benny and Maddie find this perplexing, assuming they even realize it at all, lays bare their bias, their prejudice, their utter lack of empathy, and how out of touch they truly are. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. If you believe in that religious but says who? There's obviously a bias here, a not unexpected bias. Point is that yes, much of the culture disagrees with these, but they of it. Reading videos has been found to cause fresher breath, enhanced metabolism, and greater sexual magnetism.